pain that they don't know is coming, that literally, in this case, could mean millions of dollars.
I thought I was going to make $25 million off this, and I've only got 6. Like, what happened?
We sold it out to another business at a valuation that was much lower.
Business owners are leaving an incredible amount of money on the table.
Just simply because they don't have those conversations on the front end. There's a lot of mistakes that get made on the front end that ultimately can cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the back end if not done properly.
By the time you do the math, 100% of businesses that go up for sale, only 7% of them selling, and then half of those falling apart post-close.
And then when infighting happens, now the owners, the founders say, the vision's different. I've got to jump back in. We were at a point there where we were just like, we've got to get out fully or else we're going to take everybody down with us.
Victory Private Wealth with me today. I've got Brandon and I've got Jeff. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you very much for having us.
Great to be here.
My pleasure. Looking forward to the conversation. Brandon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Brandon Agamennone. Started in the industry about 21 years ago. Have in the wealth management space, bought and sold a couple different businesses along the way. That's why something like this is near and dear to both Jeff and I's heart. From Maryland originally, moved around quite a bit, live in just north of Naples, Florida now, and married, wife and 3 kids, and super proud of them and just living life. So it's my background was in baseball. I was a pro sports. I was a pro pitcher for a long time in the minor leagues. Then had an injury, and that's when I started my first business, and I've always been entrepreneurial, but that's when we talked. I was just like, man, this guy gets it, and it's really fun to be a part of it. And so thank you again.
It's my pleasure. Great to have you here. Jeff?
Yeah, so many of the same things that Brandon said are true with my background. I played in college, played baseball in college, didn't quite make it to the professional ranks. And then spent a good majority of my professional career in a different space in coaching and higher level, we'll call it professional training and soft tissue work. And then a couple of years ago, because Brandon and I have such a long history together, as he referenced, owning other businesses and selling them. A couple of years ago, Brandon introduced this space to me and said, hey, man, I love you. And I think that you would be exceptional in this space. Would you take a look at it? And I said, well, I guess only for you though, right? And so I did. And so the rest is history in the sense of, we've been working together for the last years, really helping high net worth individuals and business owners create the word that you mentioned earlier, freedom. And, we've had a great time doing it. I live about an hour north of Dallas proper. And I'm married with 2 little girls that are in 7th grade and 5th grade. And like Brandon said, we're just rolling along, having a great time every day, man, trying to help people.
Love that. I'm both in Maryland. The president of my company of Built to Exit, Joe Callow, lives in Annapolis.
Yep.
And then I'm going to be in that triangle, Austin, Dallas, Houston. I mean, pretty much all of October, actually. I think I might as well have my mail forwarded to Texas in October.
We're there.
Yeah. Going to be over there.
I got an extra bedroom for you, buddy. We got one here
Done.
if you need it.
Done. We'll get together for sure. For sure. So, Brandon, talk to me a little bit about why you started this business and how it's different than other people in your space.
Mm-hmm. So it's a great question. So the reason I started is because of my industry background. And so I've worked for some of these other firms, the big boxes, if you will. Nothing against them. I'm not here to disparage anyone. I will just say that there was things that I felt were missing in terms of what was being pushed, if you will. So the proprietary nature of how they operate. And then specifically when it came to business owners, I felt like it was like, hey, we'll work with you after you sell, right? Give us the assets after you sell. And, Jeff and I have had this philosophy of like, let's work with people before so we can, prepare them for the sell. People always find it strange. I mean, Jeff and I just did this last week in Texas. We met with a group that we just fell in love with this family. They're phenomenal. We're not making a dime off of them, right? And we're kind of taking a jump I wouldn't say risk, but we're trying to work with them on the front end to prepare them for things, and they're kind of blown away. They're like, "Why?" Like we haven't you're not doing anything. And I said, because we want to help you avoid the pitfalls. And so they're looking almost for like a personal CFO that they haven't been in a position to hire yet. And then all along the way, we're guiding them, hopefully, to that exit. Once they're in a position to do so. That's just not how it is in the financial industry. It's after the fact. Hey, once you've exited, now give us the money. And there's a lot of things wrong with that, in my opinion. But that's why I started this. That's why we went out on our own to do this, because we were just seeing too many things that were not very positive for the client side until after the fact. And there's, as you know, there's a lot of mistakes that get made on the front end that ultimately can cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the back end, if not done properly.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Jason. Brandon and I talk a lot about the fact that this industry is so transactional versus relational, right? And I know that's something that Brandon talked about whenever he had the bright idea of us working together in this way. Is he felt like the industry was super transactional, and really a big missing piece of this was relationships, and relationships aren't built on success or on the dollar. They're built on kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Man, do I like this guy? Do I trust this guy? Do I feel like he has my best interest at heart? And that's so I think the relationship piece also is very important to us.
An alignment, and it's fascinating to me. I shared with you guys that we're building the owner syndicate, which is my long-term play, where we want to be representing small and mid-sized business owners, because as you have mentioned, they really have almost every hand that is available out there in their pocket, right? And what, from the employee, nothing against employees, but from the employees, from attorneys, from the tax man, the government doesn't care. Like, they're just like, give us our stuff. And there's no representation amongst a $17 trillion chunk of our GDP. And
Mhm.
when I run across guys like you, it's a rare thing, because I'm gonna guess. I'm just gonna take a wild guess that a couple of your exits didn't go as well as you wanted them to, or at least one of them.
How did you know, Jason? How did you
Yeah.
know?
Well, we have them actually segmented. You have an involuntary exit, which I had 3 of, right? I went out of business 3 times in a row, right? Bam, bam, bam. It was like a domino effect. And then I built something good enough that actually somebody would actually pay me some money for, but they handed me my tail in that transaction. It took way longer, beat me up in due diligence, made me carry a lot of the stuff, took forever to get paid. And while I was I had to go back in and rescue the thing a couple of times, or it all would have fallen apart. Right. So
Yep.
it's not an easy thing. And that's where I got into where Built to Exit comes from, is around a custom tailored exit. And so I see the compassion and the empathy in you, because I know that you have been through. That's the only way that you can have it. Like, why would you even care? Everybody,
Right.
to your point, and you're in, not everybody, there's some great players in your industry, but for the most part, it's transactional. And that's how I view the hand in the pocket of the business owner. They don't care. Most people just don't. They want their 5%, their 2%, their 4%. They want, okay, once all of this is done and you went through this pain and you had the baby, now we want to lay claim to be an aunt or uncle, right?
Right. Right.
and
Yep.
and the whole the whole piece of it is that business owners are leaving an incredible amount of money on the table. That's number one, in the transactions. And only, by the time you do the math, of 100% of businesses that go up for sale, only 7% of them selling, and then half of those falling apart post close, you end up
Right.
with a 3%, right? 3.5% of these businesses that sell anyway, because they don't have people like you, advocates. I have advocates on here. Everybody's like, Jason, you have competitors, you have people that are, going to take your customers. I'm like, that no, the more of us that care about the small and mid-sized business owners in this country, the more freedom we're going to have. right? The more I know, one of the things that I loved about you guys the most is we prayed on our way out of our meeting last time, and we're aligned in these certain ways that are based in service and serving an idea bigger than us. Right. So I admire that about both of you and what you're doing. I went down that path. Tell me a little bit about your exits. Let's jump into that.
So,
let's
I
peel
don't know
that.
if we have enough.
Let's poke that bear.
Do we have enough time?
Come on. Yeah. So they were in the baseball industry, at least the ones that Jeff and I were associated with directly. And we're using our background. We had a desire to help young people in this space, but do it above and beyond just the youth sports side, like really impact, mentor, have a spiritual component to it for those that want to take advantage of that, do those sort of things. And on paper, it was working tremendously. We grew exponentially. Started in 04. I think we started out in serious like 53,000 of revenue or something year one. And then like by year three, we're at 1.3. And we're like, all right, we're golden. And we had some people coming in saying, hey, I'd like a piece of this. I'd like a piece of this. And we're like, well, why would we do that? If we'd grown this much this fast. And then candidly, this shows kind of my lack of understanding of the business model we were in. The vehicle was not really repeatable. It was. And so what was happening is we were dealing more with emotion than we were things that we could control on the business side. And so even if we were making wise decisions, we were still getting hurt, so to speak, by emotions of customers because you're dealing with their kids. You're dealing, so whether it was right or wrong, we could offer them the greatest slice of pizza in the world, but they were like, well, there's one right down the street that I can get a slice from, or you understand. So when we were going to exit, we actually sold it for way less. And it was basically a debt consolidation at that point because we're trying to keep up with the growth. And then in turn, trying to, pour back into the business and get a building and do this and all these other things. And then all of a sudden we had a drop of, $500,000 of revenue in a matter of 6 weeks. That was truly uncontrollable. And so then we're like, all right, we've got to sell a piece of this. And so we ended up bringing in some equity. We restructured some things, but it had a very, very different feel to it. And then we ended up buying it back from them because of that different feel, but at pennies on the dollar. And then eventually we sold it out to another business at a valuation that was much lower than we would have originally wanted it to be at, simply because we were at a point there we were just like, we've got to get out fully or else we're going to take everybody down with us. So that was the hard, without all the billion stories that go along with that, that was the hard part. The exit on the first time just didn't work well at all. The exit on the second time was more of like, hey, we've got to find another vehicle to support our families and to do this with.
I love that.
Let me add something to that, Jason. I think one of the things that I've heard you talk about maybe before is, not making this dependent upon the owner or the ownership group, but having a business that is repeatable, whether you're in it or not. And I think our heart was so devoted to serving those kids. I mean, man, we spent, dude, hours, like 80 a week. Like we were spending tons of time with those guys, and it was great. And in our minds, we were serving them, which is definitely what we're called to do, and it's definitely something that we want to do. But we didn't realize that we were killing the business when we were doing that, because we were making the business dependent upon Brandon and myself. Right. And then when we started to back away, or if we wanted to back away, in any given week, the business would start to fall, the revenue would start to fall. And so that's something that we learned way after the fact that we wish we would have known sooner.
Yeah, that's a lot of great lessons. Like I think about, pattern recognition, right? This is kind of why you guys are in the career you're in. So certainly why I'm doing what I'm doing. When we reverse engineered, how do we build a $2 billion fund and get surrounded by people who trust each other and are like-minded and like-hearted, but have different beliefs that can stand up for this group of people called small and mid-sized business owners, right? Back into that, my talent, 2019, I sold. And I thought I was done. And I was going to rescue kids and do domestic violence and anti-domestic violence. I have to always clarify that, all of the, but, and do that stuff. And then, the Lord had different plans and took those talents and said, well, here's how you do that. Here's how you go fight a good, righteous fight is you help 600 business owners sell their companies between, 15 and $30 million. And you take a bunch of free men and women and you go fight for the next generation that kept us free and got us free. Yep. And so as I think about that, the patterns that show up in a business owner, and I know you guys deal with this, but I have to say it, and it doesn't make a lot of business owners happy, but I'm not really after making business owners happy. I'm after making them think differently, because if you think like everybody else in this business, your 95% number of businesses fail, period. Not even talking about sales, right? Not even talking about sales. I'm talking about they straight up go out of business within their first 10 years. And then less than 7% sell, and only 3.5% of those stay together. And there's this big number out there. 6 million businesses are going to change hands in the next 10 years because of the silver tsunami. I don't think that's going to happen, guys. I think what's going to happen is 3 million of those are going to shut the doors and walk away. They're just going to shut the door. Like you said it perfectly. Yep. I hear that almost at least once a week. Is it, Jason, I'm tired. I have got to get out of this thing because it's killing me, my health. It's killing my relationship. It's killing my mindset, doing all that stuff. So, there's 4 reasons. It's arrogance of the business owner, thinking because they're good at one thing that they're good at selling.
Correct.
It's the two do not equate. Matter of fact, they are diametrically opposed, right?
Yep.
Second is ignorance. They don't know what to do, right? And third, they're impatient. And fourth, they've got the wrong team around them.
Right.
Those are the 4 things. So talk to me a little bit about what you've seen in those areas as you're attempting to help business owners.
Yeah, I would say wrong team is number one that we've seen. And when we say wrong team, it's not that they're bad people or anything like that. It's just that they're not aligned. That word is so important in this. So the founder or founder, generally speaking, like this tunnel vision. This is how this was supposed to be. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 20 years ago, 6 years ago. It doesn't matter. And now they've got people who work in the business with them who they think are aligned because they get along with them. They go to dinner, they go to lunch, they talk about, they get to know each other's families, all that other stuff. And I'm talking about small, closely held businesses in particular. And then all of a sudden they're like, all right, I'm out. It's time to exit. Well, those people may not be prepared to exit for the founders to exit. And so they go, well, this sounds great. I'm now going to be owner. I'm now going to be this. And you start to the greed, you start to see the arrogance, you start to see some of those things, just little chinks in the armor, if you will, over the course of leading up to that exit. And then you get this infighting, right? And then when infighting happens, now the owners, the founders say, the vision's different. I've got to jump back in. Or the value is higher than our to be. And now why are we squabbling, man? I tried to take you all along the way. And now you're trying to argue with me over peanuts. And so I would say that is probably the number one thing is they don't have the right team in place. And not only within the business, but also the people around them. One is, and you'll have a CPA who comes in, you'll have an attorney who comes in, you have this and that. And those people are not aligned. Or the friends of a friend, right? And so they can say they're objective, but they're really not. Their interests are working for either the founder or the people who are trying to buy the bit. And you don't have these objective third parties that can just sit there and say, hey, this is what makes most sense. Are we good? You good? Good? You good? Great. They don't do that. There's always some
ulterior motives.
Right. Yep. The team to me is the number one thing.
Love that. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I was, as I was hearing you describe those four things and as I was listening to Brandon, I feel like mine is really based around arrogance. And I don't mean arrogance in the sense of arrogance. I mean a lot of business owners that I've spoken to are really, it's kind of like what you said earlier. They're really, really good at what they do. And so because of that, I think that if I just keep driving revenue, all this thing's gonna, everything's gonna happen. It's gonna line up perfect, and I'm gonna sell this thing for $1 billion in 5 years. They don't understand that it's quite a bit more complex than that. We actually have had a couple of conversations with guys that fully admit, I don't know what I'm doing outside of a business, I'm sorry, selling my product or my service. I'm really, really, really good at that, but I need you guys because I know that I don't know anything else, right? But most people, I feel like that because they can drive revenue, that they can successfully sell their business. And as you said earlier, those are diametrically opposed. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, I love what both of you said too, because this is the challenge where, when people watch my show, they either love me or they hate me, and I love that because they either love me for who I am or hate me for who I am, and both
Right.
things can be true, and I'm fine with that. But what they don't get here is fluff, and one of the things that I love when people listen to this and they dig in and they're really truly trying to find out, how can I take this, besides my spouse and my kids, the most important thing that I have in my life, the thing that's putting a roof over the head, the thing that is feeding my family, the thing that could help me retire comfortably, the thing that I could give more money to charity, the thing, that taking the responsibility and being humble and saying, yes, I know how to put roofs on houses. Yes, I know how to put paint on walls, but I do not know how to liquidate my business. Right. And there's really some stages before that, like you said, and all of this prep. There's four areas that we hyper focus on. Number one, you got to get the revenue right. Without a revenue, you don't have business. Right.
Yep.
And then the other side is the operations, because that is going to be key and core to the next piece that is the biggest, is that the business owner is going to leave.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
And the operations has to support that owner. And then you go into the finance, because that's the language that you're going to communicate to the buyer with, to say, here's what I want for this business, and be able to tell the story with numbers. And
Yep.
then the biggest piece that they miss, which you guys are helping tremendously with, is that exit planning piece. Right? Just let's put together a plan, and then let's
Right.
start to work that plan. And if more business owners would stop and understand, I just wish somehow, and I want to ask this about to both of you next, because there is some horrific stories. There's more horrific stories about sales than there is good stories about sales.
Right.
And if they could understand, I was just wish that there was like an AI that could jump into somebody's brain for a minute and go, here's all the pain you're going to go through.
Right.
Unless, because there's a way to avoid it. Right? You got two very qualified, integrity-based men here on this show that can help. Right? We got this show. This is why I do the show. I don't do it for my health. It's about laying that out to say, there is a lot of pain if you get this wrong. We are constantly, our biggest customer base are people who tried to sell one time and are hanging on by the skin of their teeth before going out of business. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, we need help to get back to that place so that we can, and then we want to help with somebody that knows what they're doing to help sell. So talk to me a little bit about the pain that people don't know or don't talk about as they start into this process. Brandon, you go first.
So this is a real story. This is obviously, I'll change the names to protect the guilty. I won't use names, but
He's changing my name to somebody
I'm
else's.
changing
Right. Yeah, his
Story
name's Schmeff. Yeah, the
Yeah.
guy's name is Schmeff.
Perfect.
But we have these people, phenomenal people, family-owned business, been around for 40 years. It would be in the mid-sized business space. and the original founder wants to sell it. He wants to do it within family. And so when we started talking with this family, and this goes into your point about the pain, we're trying to prevent the pain, right? Problem prevention versus problem solving, right? So we're trying to prevent. And I went in and three separate conversations asked the same question: who are the important people in this business that make this thing run? You know, back to your point about operations. Three different answers. Ooh, okay, we've got a problem here. And it wasn't just in identifying names, it was identifying the amount of people that they felt were, one was like, well, I think there's probably 3 or 4 people. And I was like, okay, for that business, that seems odd. But next, and one said, I think there's 8. Next person was like, probably 20. And I was like, okay, we got the issue. So right there, I know without a doubt that if those 3 people can't get on the same page with who those people are, not only you're going to have issues in the valuation and who you sell it to, but you're also going to have issues with those between 5 and 20 people that they have identified, which is going to cause a ton of pain. Because if the number is only 5, well, that means that 15 other people are looking for other jobs. If the number truly is 20, how do you make sure that those people are compensated appropriately? And how do you make sure that they are the heir apparents and have a smooth transition? Because if you're working in a service-based industry or in any industry where those people are front and center to those clients and make sure that those clients' relationships are healthy and good in order to make the sale. Otherwise, you're dropping off 30-40% of revenue, right? Like so that's one of the things that I've seen is just the pain that they don't know is coming, just simply because they don't have those conversations on the front end. And that literally in this case could mean millions of dollars.
Well said. Jeff?
Yeah, I think for me, Jason, it's more around, okay, I feel like almost every business owner on the planet, unless they do what you're talking about doing, and that is make sure that they get everything right on the front end, I believe that they overvalue their business. Just like when we sell our house, right? My house is worth X. And it's like, well, your house is worth what somebody's going to pay for it. And so I think they have a grand vision of what they're going to exit for. That ends up being less, maybe significantly less. And then what they don't realize, kind of what you said or referenced earlier about eggplant, they don't understand and estate planning. They don't understand that they think they're going to exit with a certain number. They exit with less than that. And then after they exit, they're going to lose another 35 to 40% of that sum of money. And then they're like, wait a minute. I remember 10 years ago, and I'm making this number up, I thought I was going to make $25 million off this, and I've only got 6. Like, what happened? So I mean, it really just does echo the point about I think what both of us are saying is that there's so much to be done on the front end to ensure that you have that freedom that you really are searching for.
I love it. I wish every business owner would go, yep, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where I started as an apprentice or a beginning person in my business. And I'm going to start there because there's this whole new industry I'm getting into called M&A, mergers and acquisitions. I'm getting into that business, right? And I need to learn some stuff. That is our the entire basis. We have a brokerage. We can help people sell. But at the end of the day, we're not going to take on something that we would be ashamed of moving through the marketplace, right? We're not going to take a business that we look at and we go, okay, well, you want 5 million out of it. We'll be able to get you somewhere between, 3 and 5. But you're sitting on a $20 million business. And all you have to do is boom, 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 boom. Nope. You know what? I want out. We're not, because there's so much work, even getting that $5 million or that $3 million. There's so much work that goes into it that they just demonstrated that they're not willing to do. That is going to fail and fall apart anyway. So the best exits are by a humble business owner who should be humble. Like, that's the greatest thing that God ever did for me, was to bankrupt me 3 times in a row, to say, whatever you thought you were, however bad you thought you were, right? And you ain't it, right? So there's some principles that you have to follow, and this is what we're talking about here with two principled men. There's a few stages, and I want you guys to talk about whatever one of these four, because I believe that you guys heavily influence the last L in our kind of my 4L thinking, which is one is you got to build a business that's legitimate. That's your first number one goal, which means it's doing $500,000 of EBITDA or more. Okay. When you've done that and you've got a couple of employees, that's when you have a legitimate business. The next goal from there is to liberate yourself from that business. Right. And so that's your next L, because now you have a machine that works without you. Right. Which can then lead to the third L, which is liquidation. Now I can sell all or part of my business in whatever frame, fashion, ESOP to my family, whatever form or fashion that you want to sell it in. But you get to that liquidation stage to start diversifying your concentration risk of capital, right? And then the fourth one is when you've got some of that dough. Now who do you go to create that last L, which is legacy? And you can talk about whatever L there you want to, or all of them, Brandon, and then I'll go to Jeff.
Yeah, I'd say legacy for me is probably from the ethereal. Everybody's going to have their own perspective on what legacy means to them. With pure dollars and cents, I would say that people don't think through financial how money actually works, right? So let's say that when they're working in the business, I'm just using rough numbers, they're used to making $500,000 a year. And they go, great, and build this business and they do all these things and they go, all right, now I'm going to sell it for 10 million bucks. And they go, that's great. But then they forget about the taxation on that. They forget about, like, I'm only 55 years old. I've got another probably 30 years to live. Will $10 million really create the legacy that I want it to make? Is it going to create $5 million, or I'm sorry, $500,000 a year? Because to me, it's not a win to make $500,000, sell a business, have a chunk of money, but that chunk of money only going to pull off 250 for you.
Yeah.
Right. Being half the income, you have this bigger thing, and then you have these taxes that are hitting it, inflation that's hitting it, internal inflation. You're wanting to create legacy. You're wanting to give to people. You want to do all these things, and you're like, wait a second, I'm left with nothing. I worked all my life, and I have barely anything left to show for it, and I have to live in a lower lifestyle than I'm used to. Not to mention the legacy piece. What are you really leaving at that point?
Yeah.
So legacy for me is the most, because it has to be dealt with on the front end, not on the back end. At the back end, you don't know what your number really is. So let's define what that number really is, assuming that you live 30 years after the exit or 20 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like stepping on the scale on the 30th day of your diet. What can you do about it?
Right.
Nothing. Jeff?
Yeah. So was the second L Liberate? Was that what you said, Jason?
Liberation. Yes. Liberation.
Yeah. So I feel like it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. And we definitely made this mistake. We used to talk to guys that we coached all the time about the difference of activity versus achievement, right?
Mhm.
Activity feels good, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's beneficial or productive. And so I feel like a lot of business owners, and again, I'm lumping us into that also because we were certainly guilty of it. I feel like if they could step back and understand that they don't have to do everything, and not only that they don't have to, but it serves them better in the long term if they don't, as soon as possible, right? So, but I think everybody loves their baby so much that they want to hold it and squeeze it. It's like that Chris Farley, what is it, Tommy Boy? Like, I want to hug it and rip it, or like whatever that was. It's like that's how people look at it. And it's so awesome that they're that passionate about what they're doing, but also you can't let it blind you, because you don't know what you don't know. 3, 5, 10 years down the road when you're getting ready to sell it, and it's not going to work. So I feel like liberating yourself as early as possible in your business, for me, because we lived through it personally, really is an important part.
Yeah, I love it. We're, again, being a Christian and looking at that, it's like I'm preparing my soul, right? Then I've got my family, I've got my kids, and then it takes you into the Word, into the Bible, and the Bible says, has this unbelievable parable of the talents. So there's instructions for us to be able to follow, and how to do that means, like, even just talking about this, having the conversation in public about my religion or my beliefs or whatever it is, separates me from people. And I'm glad about that. Like, the
Yeah.
thing that separates me from people that would waste my time, don't care about me anyway, all of the better that my life is. And being able to look at your business and understand, I don't believe that a business, unless you get to be the size of like Amazon or some of these corrupt businesses that are in league with our corrupt politicians, and you know what I mean, unless you get that big, you must behave. And by the way, that's not sustainable. Just saying. It may look cool, it's not sustainable. But if you're anything else besides those, you have to run your business biblically, whether you know it or not, right? Whether you're a Christian or you're not, because
Right.
it's all of the principles of how do you treat people? How do you treat your employees? Do you keep your word? How are you actually serving somebody? Are you trying to serve yourself? You don't hear of businesses that you have a giant jerk at the top of the business and he just mistreats everybody. You don't hear about those businesses being long-standing. What
Right.
you hear about is somebody who's been in business for 25 years, that treats his people or her people well, that does a
Right.
lot for the community, right? That does their duty, that does their civic, does all of that stuff. And those are my people. And those are the people I know you are all trying to protect and put a moat, right? Or some kind of structure around to protect them. And it's not just a game. So I want to take the last kind of couple minutes that we're going to be together, and I want you guys to talk about an important subject, which is actually going to be in the title of my next book, which is still a working title, but it's about the idea of something that both of you have touched on, which is the end game, right? The importance of having a conversation with somebody that can challenge your thought process to go all the way through to the end game. Like you said, 30 years, whatever. I plan on being around till 120 at least, depending on, I might put a robot arm on and, but what, so, but I plan,
Yeah.
so I plan on being here for a while. But that end game, and we don't stop. Nobody challenges us to say, stop for just a second. If you have another 50, 60 years on this earth, you want to keep doing what you're doing? Is that the best use of your time? Is that what God gave you as a talent to be able to? Is that what's on your heart? It's usually no. And the thing that we can that we end up being able to pursue, the thing that God put on our heart, is the freedom that we get when we buy back our freedom,
Right.
from the world that we live in. And that's through our business. So talk a little bit about end game conversations or structures or processes that you have with your clients.
Well, I think one of the things that you touched on early, specific to small business owners and mid-sized business owners, is they are the lifeblood of America. They just are, period. Capitalism works if you allow it to. And so in that, when you get to the end game and you start talking about the end game, a lot of those conversations generally start out with a financial number, right? Hey, I want to get to this number, but I'm like, what's your why? What is the reason why you did all this? Was it simply to make $1, or was it to do, some of the things that you're doing, which are highly admirable and really trying to make an impact? We know that the world we live in, one person can't make the immense impact across 9 billion people in the world, or 8.5 billion, whatever the number is. But collectively, if you're talking with these small business owners that are now getting, and in this case, we'll tie in the money to the end game, 25 million, 30 million, 50 million, whatever the number is. And then they get to turn around and create another passion or pour into it because they're liberated, because they have the time, because they have the financial freedom. Well, now all of a sudden, now you have this aggregate effect that is impacting across all sorts of different platforms, whether that's the entertainment industry, whether that's the sports industry, whether that's the trafficking things that are happening, which, is just an abomination across so many different levels. As Christians, you get to do those things. That to me is part of the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
Right? In game is part of the parable of the talents. Hey, I made a whole bunch of money. Now I'm going to sit and I'm going to put it in a box.
Yeah.
Nope.
Nope.
We saw what happened to that game. Taking your talents or giving them to somebody else, right?
Yep.
See the person who multiplies those talents. Maybe it starts out as financial, but it becomes so much more than that eternal, because as you and I and Jeff know, we don't get to take it with us, but we do get to leave a legacy. We get to leave a generational impact or multi-generational impact, not just financially, but in how we're educating our children or those around us to show them, like, these are the things that truly matter, whether that's widows and orphans, whether that's homeless, whether that's these trafficked children, women and men, whatever it is. That's, to me, is a part of the parable of the talent. So those are the conversations that I'm having with people. The guy that just wants to exit for 50 million, great. Okay. But like, to me, to work with those people, I want a lot more than that in order to work with those people. I want something that ties me to them, right? Like, man, I can get behind that because of what the reason is this person's doing it. It was just for money. That doesn't interest me.
I love it. Jeff?
Yeah. So when I hear you think, or I'm sorry, I think when I hear you say end game, I think more around, well, like, because I'm kind of a pragmatist by nature. I think, well, the end game, kind of like what I said earlier, doesn't just happen. Um, an analogy that I have, I was talking to my youngest daughter. Her name is Faith. She's 11. She's in her first season of club volleyball, and she was struggling with a certain skill. And she was like, well, I need to do this, which would be, in this example, the end game. And I'm like, true, but also that's step D. C becomes before D, B comes before C, and A comes before B. So in order to get to D, there is a stair-step process. Like, you can't step to the fourth rung of the ladder without 1, 2, and 3. So when I hear the word end game, I feel like people so often, it's like I said earlier, they think it's just going to magically appear, and it literally doesn't happen that way. So I feel like if people would just put a little bit more thought stages around what it is that they're actually trying to do, like Brandon said, all of the ancillary activities that they're wanting to engage themselves with after they sell their business, and they're understanding why they want their freedom, then I think it would help them so much more. So I just feel like it's so much more of a step by step process than they believe.
Yeah, well said, both of you. Well, I think you out there as the audience can tell why I wanted these two guys to come on the show, and why I highly recommend, if you are in a position, you're moving stuff. It's not my strong suit. That's not. I mean, do I do it for myself? Absolutely, but I have a particular lane, and I stay in my lane. And these guys stay in their lane, and they're excellent at it. They've honed their craft. They are who they say they are, and they're integrity based, and they're going to help you walk through this season and multiple seasons of your life in a way that will help you and your family thrive. So, parting shots, either one of you. What do you want the audience to take with them?
Jeff, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's funny, Jason. You were talking about, when you speak your faith and when you say those things out loud, it does separate you, whether people like it or don't like it. Um, Man, I'm just. It's been such a great experience getting to have this chat with you today. I was praying about it before, like God, let there be amazing work that comes from this, both in work and in deed, and how we speak about you. So for me, this has just been a tremendous blessing. It's better than I could have imagined, man. So I'm thankful for it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say, practically speaking, there may be listeners who just say, "Well, who is Victory Private Wealth?" Right? Like, I would just say, if it's okay to, we're a full service financial firm, right? But to Jeff's point, we're trying to live out our faith through the way that we do work, through the way that we engage with people. Um, and so we can do any and all of the financial services things that are out there, but we want to do it in a relational manner. Number one, we want to do it in I wouldn't even say number one. Number one is honor God with it, right? And number two, relationships in an honoring that. Um, but the final thing I'll say is just the parting shot to people would be, look, we've been there, we know those dark nights where you're sitting there going, man, how am I going to make it? And then you start to see the light and you go, okay, well, now we're here, now we're there. You cannot take on the responsibility of business ownership and not take on the responsibility of exiting that business. And I think that's really, really important to clarify with people. You don't just get to build it and then just take the exit for granted. If you really are trying to exit and you have the time on your side, let's be as diligent in the exit as you were in starting it and growing it.
It's good stewardship all the way around, right?
Yep.
Good stewardship. Right. Well, thank you, fellas. I know we're going to be connected for quite a while. And the thing about people being on my show, the thing that is common amongst anybody that I'm going to bring in here, to bring to you, is that we hold each other accountable. So if we're doing business together, we're going to be holding each other accountable. And that's a whole other level. You just don't see that out in the marketplace these days. Everybody's trying to get their buck, and you got somebody standing up on stage and, going and bragging about how many suckers they got out of the audience to buy their stuff. And that's not my group of people. That's not my family. This group of people, these two gentlemen, anybody that I hang out with is going to be in service mode. None of us are perfect. None of us have perfect backgrounds. None of us have made all the right decisions all the time. But I could tell you the commonality amongst the B2X family and the people that we decide to align with is that there's a heart for service and a humility, because we've tried it our own way. And we know that didn't work out real well.
Doesn't well, right.